Hey guys, we are in week 2 of our series Love Hate. I'm excited for our teaching today because I think it is super relevant and something that a lot of us struggle with, self included. So let's dive in. Okay, have you ever been really appreciative that one of your friends gives you a heads up? Like maybe they're like, you got a little something stuck in your teeth, or they come up to you and they're like, you need to look at your zipper, or they're like, shh, stop talking, stop talking. That person you're talking about is right behind you, right? And in the moment, those things are super awkward and uncomfortable, but ultimately we're glad they said something, right? No one likes being told that you have a big food stain on your shirt or that you have toilet paper stuck on your shoes. But when our friends give us a heads up, while we might feel a little embarrassed in the moment, that's almost always followed by being really glad that they spared us from further embarrassing ourselves, right? But I want you to think about what it's like to be on the other side of that. Have you ever been the person that felt like you needed to say something to somebody else, but you weren't sure how to go about saying it? Now, telling your friend that they have food stuck between their teeth is one thing. But we all know that there are things that we sometimes need to say to our friends that are a lot harder to say. For example, telling your friends that they are way out of line with what they're saying about somebody else when what they're saying is really degrading, that's a lot harder to say. Or confronting a friend about how they're getting drunk every weekend and then when they're drunk, they're doing a bunch of stupid stuff. That's harder to say to somebody. Or speaking up to tell somebody that what they're about to do is real stupid and they're probably going to get in a whole bunch of trouble. That's harder to say. Or one of the things that I found hardest to say when I was in high school is being in a car with a friend that is driving really fast and really recklessly and being kind of fearful for my own life, but also being like, well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want them to think I'm lame. That's a hard situation, right? And so what we're talking about today is healthy confrontation. Now, I'm just going to be honest. Personally, I don't like confrontation. It is a thing I have learned to try to discipline myself to do, but I'm not comfortable with it. And that's for several reasons that I think you can probably relate to. First, I like being liked. I think we all like being liked. And so a lot of us are afraid to confront a friend about something because there's this fear that they're going to think we're being judgmental and not like us anymore. And we want to be liked. Also, sometimes I avoid confrontation because I don't think the other person's going to listen. And so it's like, well, why risk the bad vibes if you're not going to listen anyway? Or another reason that I think a lot of us avoid confrontation is because sometimes the behavior that we see somebody else doing that is unhealthy is a thing that we've done in the past. And so we feel like we're being a hypocrite if we say something. And we're like, well, I don't have a place. What's my place in saying that? So I'll just keep my mouth shut. And we're kind of afraid that if we say something, that's what they're going to say to us is, who are you, to tell me? Last, I think a lot of us dodge confronting behaviors that are concerning because we frankly have no idea what to say. Like, what are you supposed to do? Go to your friends and be like, P.S., I think you're screwing up your whole life. So, we avoid confrontation for lots of reasons. Now, I will also say, some of you are like, not me. I have no problem telling people exactly where I think they're messing up and what they need to do about it. And if you find yourself kind of that mindset, you might be the person who will go all the way in on telling somebody else what you think, and you will drop truth bombs with no regard for where they are landing, right? No regard for what they're blowing up along the way. The problem with that is that disregarding somebody's feelings can be really hurtful. And ultimately, doing that doesn't work because typically we don't want to listen to messages that are delivered in hurtful packages, right? This is why confrontation feels so tricky. We often find ourselves either not saying the things that we know we should have said out of regard for the other person's feelings or because we want to be liked, or we are so committed to speaking the truth to the person that we say it without any regard for the person's feelings. And so what I want us to learn today is that there's a way to kind of live in the middle of that. There is a way to approach difficult conversations where we can be helpful and kind, but also to communicate a truth that might be hard to hear. Ultimately, if we can get this right, this can bring about good for you and the other person. So I want us to start by kind of keeping the bottom line in mind, right? So the bottom line is we want to love our friends well. That's our goal, right? We want to love our friends well. But if love is the goal, how are we supposed to handle it when one of our friends is literally doing something that is bad, dangerous, or real stupid? So we tend to think that we should just kind of like let our friends do what they want to do, right? Like, you do you. That seems to be the way that we're supposed to behave. Like, we're all supposed to be okay with everyone else's choices because it's their life, and like, I'm not one to judge, and like, you do your own thing. But I think we all know deep down that that way of thinking has limitations, particularly with the people that are closest to us. I'm going to give you an example from my own life. So I have a very close friend that is a recovering alcoholic, and she's been sober for about a year and a half. So if she were to call me today and say, hey, I'm really struggling and I think that I want to drink, is it loving for me to say, you do you? Who am I to judge? I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. Of course, that is not the most loving thing to do. The most loving thing in this situation isn't to sit back and let her self-destruct because I wouldn't want to appear to be putting my values on her. And so that's what we're learning to navigate today. What does it look like to love our friends when they mess up? Paul actually talked about this very thing. And in a letter to a church in a region called Galatia, which is where modern day Turkey is, Paul gives us some insight into this topic. And so this is from the book of Galatians, and it's in chapter 6. Paul writes, "Dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path. And be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself." So what Paul is saying is that if the Galatians have friends who share the same values, but they slip up and they do something that is harmful, their responsibility is to help that person get back on track. In other words, he's saying you and I should actually go further than just having a conversation. We need to actually help the people we care about get back on track to the very best place they can be, which is on track with the life that God says is best for us. Now, there's a lot that Paul isn't saying here. He isn't saying that you are personally responsible for making sure that all of your friends make wise choices all the time. He doesn't say that. He also isn't saying that you should put yourself in a position where you're actually setting yourself up for failure because you've gone so deep into their problems that now you are having problems as well. It's really important when we're navigating these situations with our friends that we use wisdom. But the point, according to Paul, is that we want to navigate with humility and gentleness the way that we help our friends that are struggling with making poor decisions. And we want to help them get on the right path. Paul actually continues in the next verse when he says, share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. Share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. So how do we help our friends get back on the right track? Well, it's by carrying each other's burdens. So to kind of get a picture of what that might look like, if you think about lifting weights, often if a person is at the gym and they're working out and they're lifting weights, they might have a spotter. And so the spotter's job is to help when the weight gets too heavy and that the person doing the lifting can no longer lift the weight on their own. So when that happens, the spotter carries the weight with the other person. They literally carry the burden of the weight along with the person doing the lifting. And that's what we're supposed to do, to be the people that help others get back on the right path by doing some of the lifting. Paul cared deeply about the people in Galatia, which is why he wrote what he did. He knew that the most loving thing to do isn't always the easiest thing to do, but we owe it to each other to speak up. Because the truth is, we need each other. Not just to point out where others have gotten off track, but to come alongside them and to help them carry the burden of getting back to the place where they should be. It is not loving to watch your friends self-destruct under the guise of, you do you, I'm not judgmental. And if we're honest, a lot of times that's what we do. We watch our friends self-destruct because we're saying, you do you, I'm not judgmental. As followers of Jesus, if we are to be a people of love who don't just point fingers at other people's mistakes or gossip about our friends whenever they mess up, we want to be the people that come alongside them. We don't wash our hands of the struggles of our friends because we just want to be liked. We don't disengage from caring because it's too awkward to speak up. We step into the struggles of the people that we love, and we help shoulder their burdens. Disengaging and avoiding conflict isn't loving. Keep in mind that carrying another's burdens also requires strength of character. That's what it takes to be a real friend, not just a friend when it's easy or convenient or fun. Again, some of us are like, I'm not afraid to speak up. I don't care what people think. And for those of us that feel that way, Paul snuck 2 words in there that I think can be really helpful for us to keep in mind when it comes to how we navigate those conversations. He says we need to be gentle and humble, meaning what we say is just as important as how we say it. If we're really loving other people with our words, then we don't want to sound judgmental, arrogant, or self-righteous. Being kind and helpful and encouraging shows people that we want to help them out of love, not because we're holding ourselves up in some sort of judgmental position. Hard conversations are, by definition, not easy. They're hard. But avoiding a hard conversation sometimes, often, isn't loving either. And enjoying a hard conversation by making somebody else look bad or feel terrible over what they've done, that's not loving either. But the conversation really isn't the point. The point is learning to ask this question and letting it be our guide. Am I showing love by how I am treating this person? Love will push us to talk about difficult things and to have the hard conversations. And love also pushes us to have those conversations in a kind and compassionate way, because that's what love does. It shares the burden of caring about the person who is carrying it and not about ourselves. So what does this look like in a practical way? Well, a good guideline for any sort of confrontation is you want to let love be the filter that you're passing everything else through. So, for example, if you've got a friend that is big time messing up and you're trying to figure out what you should do, let love be your filter. So you want to ask, what is the most loving thing to do here? It might mean that the most loving thing for you to do is to step into that hard conversation and help them get back on track. So if you realize that you need to say something, but you have no idea what to say, again, let love be the filter of your words. So ask yourself, if someone was going to have this conversation with me, how would I want them to talk to me? That will help guide your conversation from the heart and from a place of compassion rather than judgment. And last, if a friend is having a hard time keeping their lives on track, it might require more than a conversation. Sometimes we have that conversation, but then we realize they need more support. And again, to know what to do, you want to let love be the filter. So for example, if you have a friend that you have a hard conversation with about self-harm and they're like, yeah, I'm still going to do it, and they make you swear not to tell their parents, the most loving action you can take in that moment, in that situation, is to tell their parents. It's not easy, and they're not going to like it, but it is the most loving action, and love needs to be our filter when we do hard things. If we are truly committed to our friends, if we are people of love that genuinely care about the people in our lives, then it's important to let love be our filter, particularly for the hard stuff. For those conversations that aren't easy to have, for the decisions that aren't easy to make, we need to let love be our filter. But what a blessing that get to be a people that in following Christ, we're able to say, I want my life to be about love. Therefore, I will do the hard stuff so that when I say I love you, when I say I'm your friend, you know I mean it because I'm willing to do the hard stuff for the sake of love.